Whether you call it Kveik, Kvik, or Kvike, there's no denying that this unique Norwegian yeast has had a remarkable impact on the brewing scene, and Imperial Yeast's A43 Loki is one of the best versions out there. With the ability to produce a clean beer when fermented as warm as 104 degrees Fahrenheit or 40 degrees Celsius, you heard that right, while also performing well at more standard ale temperatures, Imperial Yeast A43 Loki is as versatile as it gets, meaning you have zero excuses for failing to brew throughout the year. Learn more about A43 Loki at imperialyeast.com and grab a pouch for your next batch to see what all the fuss is about. It wasn't long after getting Brewlosophy off the ground that it became something I never really imagined it would, which honestly was pretty rad. I really couldn't believe that the stuff I'd previously been just doing in my garage and sharing with my local group of brewing nerd friends was so well received by people around the world. Now, in order to keep up with this growth, we were forced to make some changes, and it soon became evident that the cost was a bit more than my family could afford, from server space and recording gear to things like the colored plastic cups that we use for our triangle test. These things are not cheap. There were a few months where our future was kind of up in the air, purely because I just couldn't justify spending even more on Brewlosophy than I already was on my hobby of homebrewing. Then I received an email from a fan who was encouraging me to try this new platform where creators could generate revenue by offering fans a little something special for their support. It was 8 years ago this month that we started our Patreon account, and it rapidly became our number one source of financial support and has remained that since then. Yes, we've had and continue to have some incredible sponsors who throw a little money our way to keep us doing what we do. But the fact of the matter is, we would not be here today if it were not for the incredible people who pledge anywhere from $1 to $15 per month to keep us doing what we do. Now, I've talked with quite a few folks who also use Patreon, and through that, I've learned that Brewlosophy is a bit of an outcast considering our total number of patrons. I genuinely mean it when I say that everyone who enjoys listening to this show or the Brewlab podcast, reading the articles we publish on brewlosophy.com, or even watching the Brewlosophy show on YouTube has our patrons to thank. You all kick major ass. Okay, moving on from that now. One of the rewards we offer patrons at a certain tier is the opportunity to kick it with someone in the brewing world for about an hour each month, where they're able to ask pretty much any questions that they want. Back in October of 2023, that guest was, well, it was me. And one thing we've gotten in the habit of doing on this podcast is occasionally sharing those sessions with everybody, all of our listeners, in part to give non-patrons a little taste of what they're missing, but also as a way to say thank you to all of our listeners, because by your listening, you are supporting us as well. So that's what we are going to be doing today. You are going to get a little peek into what these sessions are like by listening to me answer questions for about an hour from our patrons. A little bit more about our Patreon for those who may be unfamiliar. All you have to do after creating an account is make a pledge that gets you the reward tier you want. And just to be sure, all higher tiers do include the rewards from any lower tiers. Then a few days into each new month, you receive a message via Patreon outlining your rewards for that month. It's really that simple. Once you make your pledge, you're pretty much left alone until tax season when they send you the necessary forms. And for those who care, your contributions are even tax deductible. We fully understand and appreciate that not everybody has the ability to be a patron, but if you can swing it, we would love to have you on board, considering the tough times this industry is currently in, and boy, are they tough. Keeping sponsors has been a little bit more difficult, and it's nice to know that we have our patrons to fall back on. You really are, again, the reason we're able to keep doing this. I was doing a little bit of research last week and saw that our most popular level is the $5 tier, so a total of a whopping $60 per year, which not only gets patrons a unique discount to YakimaValleyHops.com every single month, that's always higher in value than their $5 pledge, but it also gets you access to our recipe database, available only to patrons of Brewlosophy, as well as these monthly live Q&A sessions. For this month, February of 2024, our guest is Dana Garvis, founder of Oregon Brew Lab. In addition to being an accomplished homebrewer, Dana is a trained brewing chemist who helped build the quality control lab at Ninkasi Brewing Company before starting her own company in 2016. Oregon Brew Lab offers a variety of essential analyses for affordable affordable prices to both commercial and home brewers. We've had the pleasure of working with Oregon Brew Lab many times over the years, and Dana is truly an awesome member of the brewing community. I'm really looking forward to this session, and you can be a part of it by making your pledge of just $3 or more by Friday, February 23rd, 2024, as Dana's going to be taking questions on Saturday, the 24th. Again, that's patreon.com/Brewlosophy. And if that doesn't float your boat, you can still help us out by using the affiliate links found at brewlosophy.com/support. We are affiliated with most of the places people buy brewing stuff online, like Amazon, More Beer, Great Fermentations. When you use those links, which you can also bookmark for future use, we get a small commission on each purchase that helps us cover production costs. Finally, if you wouldn't mind letting us know what you think about this show by leaving a rating and review in Apple Podcast or wherever it is you listen to podcasts that allows you to leave reviews, we'd appreciate that as well, as it helps people who may not have heard of us yet to more easily find the show. Feedback is brought to you by Clawhammer Supply, who are known for their incredible all-in-one electric brewing systems. I've brewed on both their 120 and 240 volt systems, and I'm telling you, these things are legit, efficient, easy to use with a relatively small footprint. You're not going to be disappointed with one of these units. Plus, the guys behind the company run an amazing YouTube channel, which you can find by searching YouTube for Clawhammer Supply. If you're in the market for electric brewing gear, make sure to check out what Clawhammer Supply has to offer at clawhammersupply.com, and don't forget to let them know Brewlosophy sent you when you're checking out. That's clawhammersupply.com. Listener Brian Dory from Asheville, North Carolina, which also happens to be the home of Clawhammer Supply, wrote in with feedback on episode 319, where contributor Will Lovell and I talked about using blue corn malt in a pale lager. Brian said, I just listened to the recent episode where you guys explored brewing with blue corn and talked a lot about brewing with corn in general. Late this past summer, I had a hankering for a lawnmower beer and was feeling some nostalgia about drinking Genesee cream ale as a teen on family trips to the Catskill Mountains in New York. So I brewed a cream ale for the first time ever, and that meant I'd be brewing with corn for the first time as well. I threw a recipe together for a 5% ABV cream ale using 10% Cumberland corn malt from my local maltster here in Asheville, North Carolina, Riverbend Malt. Brew day came around, and I ended up with a horrible efficiency on what felt like a seamless brew day. I was confused, but now realized that the recipe calculator probably wasn't accurately accounting for the extract potential of the corn malt. I was super bummed and figured this was going to be a wasted investment of time and money, resulting in a watery beer. Lo and behold, I ended up with a 3.7% cream ale that did not taste watery at all. It was actually extremely delicious and is one of my favorite beers I've brewed in the last dozen years of this hobby. I also noted that beer dropped brilliantly clear very quickly with nothing but my usual addition of Whirlfloc in the boil. It was a beautiful looking, flavorful, crushable session beer, exactly what I was going for. I'm preparing to brew it again probably a few times this summer, and I've been pondering whether or not I even want better efficiency next time around. So long story short, one benefit of brewing with corn could be the ability to brew lower ABV examples of a certain style without losing flavor, which seems to align with some of the findings of the experiment discussed in the podcast. Anyways, I really enjoyed brewing with corn to the point I've incorporated it into many more recipes and plan to explore it more and more. I also agree that it is cool to use a truly American ingredient that should arguably be celebrated rather than looked down on by much of the brewing community. Cheers and keep up the great work. Well, Brian, all I have to say is hell yeah. I love so much about what you had to say. First off, while I don't condone underage drinking, of course, the thought of sipping a Genesee cream ale in the Catskill Mountains is just so, chef's kiss. I love that idea. Camping, I'm actually heading out for a camping trip as soon as I'm done recording this. And it's, one of the things I enjoy is waking up in the morning, having beer a little bit earlier than I might on a regular weekend. So the idea of that is very appealing to me. Then there's the fact that, like Will, contributor Will, who was on that episode with me, you were using not only malted corn, which is pretty unique in and of itself, but it came from a craft maltster that is local to you in Asheville. That is so cool, a good way to support small business, again, particularly in these rough times. What's interesting to me is that it took you over a decade to even try brewing with corn. A sign of its stigma in the scene, perhaps? I think so. We are influenced by those things. Either way, I'm glad you've come to the corny side, and your experience is one I can definitely relate with. Like I said in that episode, I've never actually used malted corn myself, but rather flaked maize and quick grits. And when I do, I tend to get, slightly lower OG, though I don't think it's as bad as using the malted corn that you and Will have used, Brian. But that doesn't bother me. Those beers always tend to get incredibly clear, like you said. I'm not sure if it's because of something that's in the corn that's not in barley or vice versa, something in the barley that's not in corn, but considering how much I love clear beer, I ain't complaining. So your cream ale sounds absolutely delicious. So if you ever get an itch to package and ship some samples to California, well, thank you so much for hitting us up, Brian. It's always good to hear success stories from our listeners. If you have show feedback, you can send it to feedback@brulosophy.com or drop us a note on social media. If you haven't already, please be sure to head over to youtube.com/@thebrulosophy show. That is the @ symbol followed by The Brulosophy Show with no umlauts. And subscribe to our new-ish channel where Martin is absolutely killing it with content we are confident any listener of this show is going to enjoy. By subscribing, you're going to receive notifications when new episodes drop, which, as of the start of this month, is back to weekly. Alrighty, we'll be back with my live Q&A session with patrons of Brulosophy right after this break. Chilling work can be a chore, especially after a long brew day, but not with the Xchillerator Counterflow Chiller, which can chill a 5-gallon or 19-liter batch of wort in 5 minutes or less, leading to a strong cold break and clear wort in the fermenter. Brulosophy's Matt Del Fiacco uses the Xchillerator Max and absolutely loves it. In addition to improved chilling efficiency, every Xchillerator comes with a 5-year warranty that covers the entire chiller for manufacturer defects. If you're looking to up your chilling game and a CFC is right for you, head over to Xchillerator.com today. There's no denying that stainless steel is the best material for brewing equipment, and Delta Brewing Systems offers some of the lowest prices on high-quality stainless gear, like the Firm Tank, which in addition to holding 8 gallons or 30 liters of wort, comes with a domed lid to even further reduce the chances of a messy blow-off. Plus, it can hold up to 4 psi of pressure for closed transfers. Delta Brewing Systems also has their own line of brew kettles, as well as one of the lowest-priced all-in-one electric brewing systems out there, and their prices are shockingly low. If you're in the market for legit stainless gear that won't break the bank, do yourself a favor and head over to deltabrewingsystems.com today.
Fargo, the new virtual assistant from Wells Fargo, makes banking faster and easier. Like this.
Fargo, what's my checking account routing number?
And this.
Fargo, turn off my debit card.
And this.
Fargo, what did I spend on groceries last month?
And that's just the beginning. Do you, Fargo? You can. In the Wells Fargo mobile app. Learn more at wellsfargo.com/getfargo.
Terms and conditions apply. Your mobile carrier's availability and message and data rates may apply. Wells Fargo Bank, N.A., member FDIC.
The regular season is heating up. New stars are emerging, and that means more opportunities to win up to 25 times your cash on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection on a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's that easy. Let it fly to turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Watch your favorite players and get paid doing it this basketball season. See your entries make progress during the game or make new entries for the second half and the fourth quarter. 3-pointers, assists, rebounds, and everything in between are yours for the taking. Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
Well, good morning, patrons. I see we've already got 5 people in the group. Thanks for joining us this morning. I've got a new-ish computer setup. What up, Adam? And it doesn't have a built-in webcam, so I've been using my iPhone as the webcam. It's this deal called Continuity Camera. I won't forget to scroll, Eric. Thank you. Anyways, it's a pain in the butt to use, and it looks good and everything, but I couldn't figure out a way to get it to work with Facebook. So I've got my phone that I'm doing this on, and then I'll read the comments over here on the actual computer. So they're one on top of the other. It's actually a pretty legit setup. But yeah, thank you guys so much for joining us. I think it's been a little bit over 2 years since the last time I did one of these Q&As, and I apologize if I share information. I'm certain I'm going to share information that I've already shared before. But maybe we'll get some new folks in here who have some new questions as well. I am very much on time. Yes, that's kind of one of my demons is the punctuality. I know. So I'll start off with a little bit of a history. I'm going to sit back here and get comfortable. It's the first really kind of nippy day here in the Central Valley. I woke up and it was 42 degrees Fahrenheit outside. Let's see. Yeah. So back in 2014 is when Brulosophy got off the ground. I feel like I've told this story a number of times. So see if I can't find some other interesting tidbits in there. I had been brewing with a buddy of mine who I worked with up at the prison, and something happened in the state where we had to either quit our jobs or go to another institution. And he opted with his, with his girlfriend at the time to go to a different institution than the one I opted to go to. And that really bummed me out. And so to keep me interested in brewing, since we were the ones brewing together all the time, thank you, David. That makes me feel good that I sound good and I look good, or decent at least. But he opted to go to a different place than I did. And so I kind of, brewing kind of got boring, and it felt, I was like, every time I'd go out there, I'd be like, man, I just wish he was here. And so to keep myself interested, I started doing these experiments, and it, building out dual, brewing setups. Not something a normal human being would do, but I did that because I really, I'm a psychologist, and I love really controlled studies in the social sciences, which I feel like perception in general is. I do feel like being able to control to boil these variables down into as isolated as we can, and testing those out to see what impact they really have. And not even, a lot of people think that we're trying to make claims about the we are saying what the impact was, and what we're doing with the triangle test is saying, hey, can people tell a difference in these beers brewed two different ways? That is it. And we're not even being certain about that. We're not, or absolute about that. We're not saying, oh, look, you don't need to do this anymore because, somebody else, or because our experiment said that people couldn't tell them apart. That's just not the case at all. We're just interested because we're nerds. And so that's how this whole thing got off the ground. A lot of people ask me, did you have, the intention to start a business when Brulosophy became a thing? I actually hopped on that silly word Brulosophy with the umlaut and everything like a year before I even started the website. And that's just because I'm a kind of a philosophy nerd. I like to read all the different, old school philosophers, some modern philosophers. And so I liked brewing at the same time. And so brewing and philosophy, it sounded good and looked silly. So that's where that came from. There was never any intention to make it what it is today, but I love that it's become what it has today. So Eric's bringing the heat already, asking some fun questions. Let me see if I can find a way to open up these comments more readily. Oh, here, let's do this. There we go. Okay. All right. So David, welcome to the crew, buddy, says, you are very much on time. I've already commented that, yes, I am punctual to a fault. It's one of my things. Let's see. Hey, what up, Will? Will Lovell from Brulosophy over here. Now you know how we feel with the FB Live. I know it's a pain in the butt, dude. I've known that because I've done it a couple of times. And I don't know of a better option. If somebody knows of a better option for doing these types of things that don't require me to give out my actual passwords to guests, let me know. I'm open to doing them in another way. That I know a lot of people hate Facebook. I'm not the biggest fan myself, but I can't think of a better option. So, all right, I won't forget to scroll, Eric. I'm doing my best here. Let's see. I'm just going to go right down these. You guys are already bringing it. Every time you do, it scrolls up. Right off the bat, Eric Pierce asks, has anyone else besides me asked about the lyrics to your closing song? So Eric, I hope you don't mind that I share this story. You guys know most of the music in the Brulosophy podcast, as well as the Brew Lab, is actually stuff that was, not all of it, but most of it was stuff that was created in part by an elementary school friend of mine. When I moved from Fresno to Seattle in 1992, I was 11 years old. I was in my sixth grade. I went into sixth grade when I got up there, and I met this guy named Mark Gadgetar. He was a guitar player, even in the sixth grade. This is Seattle in the 90s. He was a guitar player. He played the drums, just this multi-instrumentalist that I always looked up to for his talent and all of that stuff. Well, as you know, we grew up, we kind of went our separate ways, and I came home, did my thing with the brewing stuff, and he did his thing with the music stuff. He was the drummer for the band The Blood Brothers. If you've ever listened to that kind of hardcore type of music. But when they broke up, he ended up being a part of multiple, I guess you could kind of call them like hip hop groups. And one of them was African Tiger. And I thought they were rad. And so I reached out to him as I was developing the Brulosophy podcast thing, and I couldn't find any good music that I liked for commercials or for segues or anything like that. And he just kind of gave me full access to all of his unreleased stuff, or most of it was unreleased. And one of the things that I hopped on was the song at the end of every episode of the Brulosophy podcast. Well, yesterday I get an email from Eric Pierce asking me why that song is encouraging the use of Oxy, which is an opiate. I'm a psychologist in a prison where most people have some form of a drug addiction. I'm perfectly fine with cannabis. You do you, I do me. But I'm definitely not in the business of encouraging people to do something like OxyContin or opiates. The beginning of the song, he actually says, start off the morning with some hot tea, not Oxy. So just to clarify that if anybody else is wondering, Eric, I thought that was hilarious, man. And I appreciate your thoughtfulness. What is my will level, Brulosophy's will level? Oh, we got some celebrities in the group here. He asks what my favorite taco is. You know that I live in a very heavily Mexican food region, don't you? My favorite type of taco is al pastor. Without a doubt. And I will take it on corn over flour 99% of the time. I do love flour tortillas, don't get me wrong. I just love the flavor of corn tortillas and how small they are, because then you can have like 3 or 4 tacos. And Aaron Rodgers says he likes corn for fish and flour for other meats. Ooh, I like corn for everything, but I'm the same with flour tortillas. I'll put, to me, flour tortilla is more for burritos, but I know that we can use them for tacos as well. 2 more questions from Eric Pierce. Who cuts your hair? This is my pillow cut this hair, or did my hair do? I just go. My wife gets on me because I don't schedule like with a specific person to cut my hair. I go whenever I find like 20 free minutes. So I think I've had like the same person cut my hair maybe twice. And what do you do? What did you do your doctoral thesis on? Well, my doctoral dissertation, you're going to be surprised by this, was actually on, we have a very large Mexican-American population, or Mexican population even here in the Central Valley. And so we had it's kind of a boring study, but it was interesting at the time. We actually had access to a bunch of data that some undergraduate students had collected, and we could go in as so long as we did some, it was like, it really felt just like office work. We were dictating stuff and whatever. And we had access to this data. And if we could figure out a study from what was existing there, we were allowed to use that. And so what I did was, in essence, it was a little bit more convoluted than this, but the way judges dole out punishments for drunk driving to people based on their proficiency with the English language. So if they don't speak any English, are people who just speak Spanish getting harsher penalties than people who are white and speak English really well? And what we found is that seems to be true, is that if you are darker skinned, I mean, I think most people would predict this, and as sad as it is, we were able to flesh it out, as if you're darker skinned and you don't speak very good English, chances are you're going to get in a little bit more trouble than a white English speaking counterpart. And that sucks, but are hot dogs a sandwich, Will? I've never considered it a sandwich. I've heard that argument though, that hot dogs are like a sandwich with a round piece of meat, or I guess a tubular piece of meat instead of a flat one. I don't care is the answer. I like hot dogs. So, David Chebby asks, why did you become a psychiatrist, and how did you end up in prison with that? Pun intended. First off, David, I'm actually not a psychiatrist. I'm a psychologist. And I know a lot of people kind of view them as one and the same. They're quite different. Psychiatrists are MDs. And a lot of psychiatrists will hate to hear me say this, but their primary thing is medication, is psychotropic medication to treat mental health symptoms. Psychologists, what we're more known for, I guess what kind of separates us from other types of therapists in general, or counselors, if you will, is that we can administer psychological testing. A lot of psychologists don't do that these days, and so it doesn't really factor into what I do in my day to day. I do the same thing as a lot of social workers and as a lot of marriage and family therapists. I see people and I try to help them, feel better about what they're doing and try to help them organize their way of thinking and such, so that they hopefully, I work in a prison and I'll get to that in a minute, but that they're able to, it's really, every psychologist or mental health clinician has a kind of a different philosophy as to what their job is. But I think the one thing we all agree on is that we want to help, right? What help looks like is different for everybody. I still, after almost, I've been doing mental health work for almost 20 years now, and I still question what it means to help and the subjectivity of that even. But the reason I went to the prison, I hadn't originally planned on being a psychologist in a prison. But about halfway through my grad school, I started I was one of those students who really dug into it, and I was looking for these little nuggets of truth. And what I ended up finding, kind of like my experience with religion, is that there really isn't any truth necessarily. You can't take a human being or the human condition and boil it down to specific things that you just know. There's a lot of speculation. And what happened is I'm reading all of these different theories, or what we refer to as theoretical orientations. In the end, again, what it boiled down to is that we don't really know, but we're going to use it. There was one that I read, one book that I read called Ego Psychology. And in it, in the foreword, the author said, if you're going to practice from this perspective, you have to be dogmatic about that. And that freaked me out because I'm not good with dogmatism. And so I thought, well, what's an environment? I'm not going to quit grad school, but what's an environment I can go to where I feel like I'm not asking them to write me a check for this version of help that I'm claiming to offer? And prison was it. I kind of feel like Robin Hood. And I know that sounds kind of like I'm patting myself on the back. It's actually quite the opposite. I felt like I didn't really have much to offer to the person who wanted to come and pay me for my help, for my, we don't give advice, but just to listen. And I felt like, man, in a way it's like this emotional, I don't want to use the word, but we're selling something. You're going to pay me to be this person to listen to you. And I feel like we should, we all have those friends. And I think therapy is incredibly important. My mind made it such that I didn't think I'd be an effective community therapist. In a prison, I feel like I'm pretty decent at it because I can relate with these people on some level. Don't take that the wrong way. And then as I got going, you have to deal with the bureaucracy, and that sucks. And you have to deal with all kinds of things you don't really need to focus on if you're doing community work. But I'm okay with that because I like dealing with the people who would otherwise not have that level of help. Boy, that was a long-winded explanation. Okay, let's see here. What's the craziest or most interesting story you can tell us that happened at work? I kind of figured we might go in this direction. That was a question from Adam Flynn. I've got one very poignant experience at work because it involved me directly being attacked. And, everybody wonders like, if you go into prison, it's unsafe and, you're going to get beat up or anything like that. The good majority of people are perfectly safe. I remember the first day I walked into the institution after getting hired, I was like, why is everybody just walking around? This is crazy. It's normal. You walk in and it almost feels like you're just at a big park type of thing. And inmates are walking around everywhere. You got one set of inmates who can't go anywhere without being escorted. And those are the people who are in administrative segregation, which is ADSEG, or the jail within the prison. But other than that, people are just kind of walking around doing their thing. And I work in a department that is, for mental health, we refer to things as levels of care. And so I work in a department that's a little bit higher of a level of care. So people who require a little bit more support and help. And surprisingly enough, it's not like a deep therapy thing. It really is kind of keeping them on track and making sure that they've got their needs met. So I had this patient one time, excuse me, and she was pretty delusional, but otherwise kind of a sweet lady, and a little bit younger than I was. She was probably like 26 or 27. She was in prison for attempted murder. She attempted to murder her mother because she was convinced her mom had been infected by Satan and was being guided to do these bad things to the world, basically. And this lady was about double my size. She was very large and taller than me, which isn't a feat by any means at 5'9", but also like wider than me and just bigger than me overall. Well, I had gone. She was on the bottom tier in the the unit that she lived on, and I had a patient who was on the second tier, and so I walked up to the second tier to try to convince this patient to come out and chat with me because she liked to refuse meetings. So I go up there and I'm talking to her, and I see this other lady, another patient of mine, walk up, and she's about 20 feet from me, and I looked at her and I said, "Well, you don't live on the second tier. You're not supposed to be up here. It's technically out of bounds. She could get written up for it." She gives me this look and she says, "You're evil." And I said, "Okay, you need to go downstairs and go do your thing. Go back to group or whatever." So me and the other gal go downstairs, and we're sitting on these like benches in front of a television. And again, this was 13 years ago now. So, and we're just sitting there talking. And next thing I know, I'm seeing stars, and my sunglasses that were up on my head had flown about 3 feet in front of me. And all of these other ladies in the, I was working at a women's prison. All of these other ladies just come running over and they're yelling. And I'm like, what is going on? I lost it. I didn't know what was happening. Well, it was the inmates who informed me that this gal had come and punched me in the back of the head. I'm just glad she wasn't holding a pencil or something, but she punched me really hard in the back of the head. And I didn't even know. I thought a canister light had fallen off the ceiling and hit me in the head. So anyways, the officers come over, and as they're arresting her, she looks, this is the creepiest thing ever. She had a lazy eye, and I'm not making fun of people with lazy eye, but it made this really almost creepier because she looks over at me, to the right as I'm sitting there trying to recover from this whole thing. She's getting cuffed up, and she said, "You are the devil, Dr. Schott. You are the devil." And I just like freaked me out a little bit. So she got taken away and put in another institution. When that kind of a thing happens, they will not house an inmate in the same institution as the staff member that they assaulted. And I happened to know the psychologist who was treating her at the other institution. So I got a call a few weeks later from this colleague of mine saying, "Hey, she just told me that the whole reason she did it was because she was convinced you were cheating on her." So that's my craziest story. I promise you I was not cheating on her. I mean, that's not how things work, but that's kind of the world that I live in these days, is that kind of delusional stuff like that. And we're dealing with it nonstop. So, all right, let's see here. Another question. Hopefully that sufficed. That story sufficed. It was wild. Jake Fall says, "Do you have any experience using the corny keg lids that have the built-in CO2 carb stone? I recently started kegging." Hold on one sec. I recently started kegging and was trying to speed up the time to carbonate with the low and slow method. I got the carb lid, and I ended up way over carbonating the beer with a standard pressure chart for PSI temp. Overall, I was not impressed with the item and went back to the low and slow carbonation method. Jake, here's the deal. I used one once, and to me, it was no different than when I didn't use it. So either I used it wrong, or the way that I carbonate my beer, I'm just happy with already. So my experience is that it didn't really make much of a difference. I don't know why that would get you to overcarb if you're going low and slow, because that pressure is pressure and time is time. So the idea behind a carb stone is that my understanding is that it makes the CO2, I guess, bubbles much smaller so that it stays in the beer easier or something like that. I'm certainly not a carbonation expert, but I just burst carb everything, and I'm drinking anything that I make, whether it's sparkling water, cocktails, ciders, beers, anything that I make, I'm drinking within 24 hours, and it's perfectly carbed. And the way that I like to do it is 50 PSI for 18 hours for most things, between 16 and 18 hours, basically whenever I wake up or get home from work. So I'm not, those things just seem like a gimmick to me. And they freak me out because they're impossible to actually clean. You got to boil them. You got to do all that kind of stuff. And so I'm just not into that. I like simplicity. Kyle Smith asks, "What is my favorite English style of beer?" Ooh, that's a good question, because I've never really thought about, I don't think of things in terms of favorites most of the time. But I would say if I had to drink one English style of beer for the rest of my life and have nothing else, I'd have to go with British Golden Ale. Only because I like pale colored, easy drinking, crisp types of beers. I've never had a bad British Golden Ale, commercially speaking, at least. I've had a couple pretty gnarly homebrewed ones, but I love mild as well. I like being able to just crush a nice, tasty, mild poured off of an engine type of thing. Kyle Smith says, thank you for the podcast and website. You are so welcome. Your knowledge is much appreciated and has made me a much better brewer. Boy, I'll take the compliment, but I'm not sure that's me, Kyle. I'll give you the credit on that. You're the good brewer, bud. Jesse Burke asks, how's Jersey doing? As far as I know, he and I text every once in a while. It's usually sentimental stuff, music that we used to listen to together and reminiscing and all of that, but he's doing great. He's living down in Enid, Oklahoma now. So if you're in the area, hit him up on Facebook or something, or not Facebook. He doesn't Facebook, on Instagram. And you can, he'd love to meet up with you. He's met up with a couple of Brulosophy fans, in fact. But yeah, he's doing good. They built they're in the process of building, I believe, not really a barn, but like a shed, not a shed. It's big, it's huge. But like let's just call it a barn, where they're going to have like a suite for people to stay in, for visitors to stay in, but it's also like a game room, and he's got his bar out there and everything. So I'm stoked to eventually make it down to Enid, Oklahoma sometime and hang out with them. But yeah, he's doing great. He and his wife are just absolutely loving the move, and their kids are growing up just like all of our kids. It's pretty gnarly stuff to see. So he's doing good. Jake Fall also asks, God, every time you guys leave a question, it scoots the chat stuff down. Let's see. Can you describe a California common? I recently brewed an Anchor Steam clone, and being here in Florida, it's not an easy style to get beers to compare mine against. Mine is good. It's not as malty as I was thinking it would be. Very crisp and clean, but I mostly brew Belgian and German styles, so my palate may be sort of skewed by that. Jake, so California Common is one of my, I say this a lot, but it really is one of my favorite styles. I love drinking Anchor Steam, and pretty much every homebrewed version that my friends and I have made have come out really well. I have a recipe on the website that is, I believe it's called What Are We Here For? Cal Common. And it's just an absolutely fantastic beer. I think it scored a 43 or a 44 in a competition a decade ago. But to me, California Common should be slightly edged toward the malt, but you're balancing that with Northern Brewer hops, which have this really, it's like a woody, but sweet woody, slightly minty even in the finish type of note that I absolutely adore. I just think it's so good. And when you blend that with that kind of medium crystal malt, not dark, but darker base malt type of deal, it comes together in this whole gestalt that I just think is really enjoyable. I think they're supposed to be pretty crisp and clean. They're not supposed to be like sweet and malty. Northern Brewer is a great bittering hop. I mean, it imparts a really nice, in my opinion, bitterness, and that is necessary for California Common. But again, you're fermenting it with technically a lager yeast strain, and so when you make a lager beer, even you think about Schwartz beer or Munich Dunkel. Those aren't supposed to be sweet and thick and rich. They're still supposed to be dry, in my opinion, at least, but they're supposed to be really drinkable and dry. That's what makes them so easy to drink. And that really is, in my opinion, when you're making any sort of lager or hybrid lager type of beer, that's the aim. So I think it sounds to me, Jake, I'd be happy if you send me some and I can let you know for sure. But like what you made was probably a spot on version of it. I will say, as much as I love Anchor Steam, one of the unique qualities that I get in their beer is almost it's like a very, very subtle, sharp, I don't know how to describe this in a positive way because I actually like it, but it's borders on metallic, but it's not metallic. There's something there that makes, and it may be a function of their fermentation process or something like that. But there's something there that I have not been able to replicate, and I've just kind of given up on trying to find it because I've been happy with my Cal Common, but yeah, so sounds to me like you made a good version of it. Let's see. Mike Patrick actually responded to you. It sounds or about the corny kegs, Jake, and Mike. I might as well share what Mike said because this is interesting info. He says, I have them for every keg I own. I love them, but found that the CO2 chart is not accurate. Oh, there you go. I had to trial and error to get it right. Based on my experience, it's all about finding the right PSI for your regulator. That's interesting. I would think that regulators were pretty consistent. And in my experience, I've gone through like 10 of these things, just with various builds that I've made. They've all been about the same. So it may very well be that you're right. You have to, like Mike is saying, Jake, that you have to figure out something with your regulator and figure it out for yourself. David asks, it just jumped. Yeah, in Germany, therapy is luckily covered by health insurance. You're very fortunate for that, David. But waiting times are often up to 2 years. Wow. Understandable, though, why you chose prison as a workplace. Yeah, man, it's, here you can find a therapist and your insurance will usually cover it. I think I've got friends in therapy. I've gone to therapy and you're paying like $15 a session just for your copay. And if you find a therapist who has an opening, boom, you're in the next week, so that's pretty big benefit that we've got over here. More Q&A with yours truly right after these messages from our sponsors. After a long brew day, the last thing I want to do is waste more time chilling wort. I've tried so many different options, and ultimately I settled on the super efficient immersion chillers made by Jaded Brewing. With the King Cobra and Hydra, I'm able to chill my entire batch of wort from boiling to just a few degrees above groundwater temperature in as little as 6 minutes. If an immersion chiller is right for your brewery, then do yourself a favor and check out all of the rad options Jaded Brewing has to offer at jadedbrewing.com. And be sure to let them know Brewlosophy sent you. As every brewer knows, the best beer requires the best hops, which Yakima Valley Hops provides fresh from the source to brewers around the world, carrying everything from classics like Cascade to modern favorites like Galaxy and Mosaic, as well as other ingredients and gear. Yakima Valley Hops has it all. And don't forget to check out their new podcast, The Late Edition, where the YVH crew goes into depth on our favorite plant with industry experts. Head over to YakimaValleyHops.com now to see all they have to offer and subscribe to The Late Edition wherever it is you listen to podcasts.
Fargo, the new virtual assistant from Wells Fargo, makes banking faster and easier. Like this.
Fargo, what's my checking account routing number?
And this.
Fargo, turn off my debit card.
And this.
Fargo, what did I spend on groceries last month?
And that's just the beginning. Do you, Fargo? You can. In the Wells Fargo mobile app. Learn more at wellsfargo.com/getfargo.
Terms and conditions apply. Your mobile carrier's availability and message and data rates may apply. Wells Fargo Bank, N.A., member FDIC.
The regular season is heating up. New stars are emerging, and that means more opportunities to win up to 25 times your cash on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection on a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's that easy. Let it fly to turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Watch your favorite players and get paid doing it this basketball season. See your entries make progress during the game or make new entries for the second half and the fourth quarter. 3-pointers, assists, rebounds, and everything in between are yours for the taking. Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
Jason Blind says, new Patreon here. Oh, you are a patron, Jason, and I appreciate you so much. Thank you. Jason says, thanks for all of the food for thought you put out there through Brewlosophy. I'm curious to hear more about your thoughts on the state of homebrewing in 2023 episode that you recently did and what can be done to bring more folks to the hobby. Boy, I could go on forever about this one, Jason. And in part because, again, I'm not going to pretend to know why things are tanking. Maybe that's too harsh of a term, but or what we can do to bring people back to it. But I think there's 2 things that I go to. I used to work in sales in between grad school my undergrad and grad school. And for whatever reason, I was pretty doggone good at it. And I think a part of it was I refused to be dishonest and lie. And I think people sense that in a person. And it's the same way I am with Brewlosophy. I just keep it real, right? But I think there's also, when you tap into that thing that people have, that human aspect of people, you feel something, and you there's an element of trust. There's all of these things, and I feel like every time this is probably going to get me in trouble, but every time some known name in the brewing world shits on big beer, or what we're doing is we're excluding all of the people who might one day be interested in craft, or might one day be interested in home brewing, and we're making ourselves look stupid to them. And I get it. I get wanting to like promote craft, but you've got to be cognizant of how that looks on the outside to the people who are not yet here. We don't have to be an exclusive club of hoity-toity brewers. It's okay if what you want to brew is Miller Lite. That is perfectly fine. You're still brewing. Getting your hands into it, keeping this hobby going. And I feel like just based on some of the conversations that I've had over the years, that one of the things that has made people not so interested in doing this is that mentality, is looking at it. And we look kind of like arrogant jerks sometimes, and particularly the more vocal people out there. Right? I've put a picture on, or like my wife will post a photo of our family and I've got a Miller Lite in my hand, and you'll see people who their names commenting and saying, why the hell do you have a Miller Lite? Because that's what I want to drink. That's why. Okay. Well, imagine what people who don't brew yet, how they interpret that. They're looking and saying, yeah, I like Miller Lite too. Why do I want to be a part of that? So I think that's a big part of it. And so what can we do is stop doing that kind of stuff. Let's grow up. Let's be adults here. I get it. You're afraid that big beer is squeezing out craft beer. You know what? Craft beer is going to start squeezing itself out here soon if we don't start thinking of new and modern ways to approach the people who aren't currently brewing or into craft. So that's my answer to that. I honestly, Jason, could go on forever on different ideas and stuff about why we are in the state that we're in. I think some of the bigger organizations out there aren't doing themselves any favors with the approaches that they're taking and what they're attaching their values to. I think there's things that we can do that we haven't done yet, whether they're types of events or organizing certain events or adapting types of events to make them more appealing to people. And we're just kind of in this holding pattern right now is how it feels for me. And I'll tell you, the fact that we have stuck it out as Brewlosophy, that we've continued to publish on the website, the podcast, and we even started the Brewlosophy show, which if you haven't watched that, go check it out on YouTube. It's awesome. I think that hopefully sends or is an indicator of our sentiment and our what we hope for this rad hobby is to keep it alive and to keep people interested. And people comment, well, this I remember when Martin did the bathtub beer, right? That was just for fun. That's what we want, is to keep it fun. And people are like, that's gross. I don't know why you're doing this on Brewlosophy, because that's what we are. We want to keep things fun and interesting. So it doesn't bother us that you don't like it. Okay, enough on that. Eric asks again, what's the next beer style you're looking forward to brewing? This is going to sound stupid, but the next style, next thing I'm brewing is going to be a hard cider for Thanksgiving. And then the beer I'm going to brew after that is a Czech Pilsner. I've actually got it designed. I'm just waiting for some time to open up for me to brew it. So not terribly exciting, but I went to the Czech Republic and namely Prague with my family over the summer, and holy moly, people aren't kidding when they tell you that the beer there is just phenomenal, and it sure was. Pilsner Urquell, fresh in Prague. Holy moly, so good. Hey, buddy, what up, Steve? Another Brewlosophy contributor in the chat here. Mike Patrick asks, is there a commercial beer you used to love that just doesn't live up to expectations today? Oh, man. There's a few, actually. Yeah. Let's see. What's one that... Well, I'll tell you one because I don't think it's going to hurt anybody's feelings, and most people are going to disagree with me. The very first time I had Blind Pig from Russian River, I thought it was better than Pliny the Elder and loved the hell out of it. Now I drink it and I'm like, okay, it's a great IPA, but it is not what I remember it being when I first had it, 15 years ago. And Pliny the Elder to me has maintained its incredibleness in terms of double IPA. So there's one example. I went out yesterday. What blows my mind is I went out yesterday to pick up some Alaskan Amber because we're doing the Average Brew Review. You guys get the inside scoop on this one. We're doing the Average Brew Review alt beer reviews today. So that's the other big thing I've got going on today. And you can't find it anywhere now. And I was looking online, like, what happened to this? And they're still distributing. I guess they're just not distributing as much, probably because of where we're at, the modern state of things here. But it was crazy reading some of the reviews. People are like, this is a sweet, malt bomb. It doesn't taste like it used to. So I'd be really interested to try some of the beers that I actually kind of introduced me to craft beer to see if I still like those. I just got to be able to get my hands on them. So. Patrick, is it Powell? Says, you've mentioned on some episodes that you write and play music. Oh, check this out. Oh, yeah. It's kind of the thing that I do more than anything else, actually. So what styles of music are you playing and what are you listening to currently? Ooh, these are the kinds of questions I've been waiting for. That's actually a new guitar. I got it about a month and a half, 2 months ago. And it's my first Taylor. I've never been a Taylor fan. I've got a Martin D15 that I've been playing for over 20 years, and I just love the way it sounds. But my daughter's been learning how to play guitar, and I thought, be cool if we could play together. So this Taylor was on sale, a really good deal, and so I picked it up. It is an American-made. It's an AD22, not the 22E. It doesn't have the electric stuff inside. I'm not a big fan of Taylor's electronics, so I'll probably put LR bags in there at some point. But anyways, the type of music I play, I'm not sure how to define it. Some people have been asking me that for a while. If you go to, I believe it is soundcloud.com/thatstrangeredafternoon, you can listen to all of the stuff that I've written over the years. Some of it I go back and listen to and I cringe real hard. A lot of it is about my deconstruction. I'll be really honest about that. But feel free to check it out. I would say most of it's acoustic nowadays because I don't have a band, but I started off my music writing with a band. There's a long story there that I can tell later on if you guys want to hear it. But once the band broke up and my wife and I got married, and we started having kids, it was all acoustic from there on out. And a lot of them are songs that I originally started with the band that I kind of adapted to be acoustic. So I would say just because of the acoustic piece of it, I'd say probably, kind of cheesy folk music. so I don't know. I've had people tell me it's more indie style or what. Again, labels, whatever. It is what it is. And I'm not entirely sure how to define it, but what I'm listening to today, my daughter is a huge Taylor Swift fan. I don't get into it. I'm not denigrating, her or anything like that, but a part of her, when she uses our Spotify, I start to get these different recommendations because that's how Spotify works. And I think it's rad. I get these different recommendations, and one of the recommendations I got recently, she and I, one area where my oldest daughter and I really mesh is that she loves the Smiths, Morrissey and all that style of music, The Cure and all those. And so we listen to that stuff all together. Anyways, I listen to all the normal stuff. Big fan of kind of modern bluegrassy type of stuff. Watch House, Tyler Childers, stuff like that. I really, as far as really popular artists go, I think Chris Stapleton is one of the best singers that I've ever heard in my life. But I also listen to the old stuff. I was listening to the Get Up Kids the other day. Further Seems Forever. That's a throwback. And lately though, there's been this group called Hers. That I've been digging a lot, and I really like their sound. Sadly, I learned that in 2019, these two young guys who made up this band from England, they were from Liverpool, actually got into a car accident on a tour here in the States. They were in Arizona and died. And so there's something about that story that's really made their music a lot more appealing to me. But let's see, is there anything else? What else am I listening to a lot of lately? Yesterday I discovered Josiah and the Bonvilles. That's pretty good stuff. That's kind of more that like 4 on the floor stomp style of music, but it's pretty good. He's all acoustic stuff. He does a lot of covers. My daughter informed me, I guess there was a song by, what's his name? Justin Bieber that he covered. And I just thought it was one of his songs. It was good. So that's what I'm listening to lately. And mostly what I listen to is whatever my wife and kids put on, because you know how it is being a dad these days. You just gotta roll with it. Let's see. Tell us about. Oh, wait, I skipped a couple. I'll get back to that one, Haven. Let's see. Have you ever tried or thought about to work in a commercial brewery? Never tried, never wanted to. That is not my gig. I know a lot of brewers or home brewers really have this dream of becoming a professional brewer. That I've never had that. I can honestly tell you, I've never wanted to do that. I've never wanted to leave my main job to be a brewer or to do brewlosophy. I like having both of these and dipping my feet into both of these worlds. So, yeah, no, David, I haven't. I've helped out in commercial breweries many times. I much prefer drinking the end product than I do making it with the commercial brewers. There's just too much work, and it's hard work, man. You cleaning out mash tuns and stuff, not my deal. I like easy stuff. Sitting in front of a computer, something like that. Haven says, tell us about the best sandwich you've ever had in your life. Did somebody tell you, Haven, about my obsession with sub sandwiches? It's a genuine obsession. I told my wife that for the rest of my life, if I could have a sandwich from my 5 favorite sandwich shops for lunch one day every week and then just rotate through those every week, I would do it. And I'd be a happy camper. The best sandwich I've ever had in my life. I mean, it's probably going to be boring to you, but this is going to piss. I love Jimmy John's sandwiches. I just think everything that they put in those things is so good. I don't like favorites. I don't pick favorites. I don't like, that's just not a thing that I do. The one favorite I have is my wife and my kids. They're my favorites. But besides that, I'm open to anything. And so I love Jimmy John's. I love Porta Subs. I love the old sub shop up in Seattle, all that stuff. We've got some local Italian delis here in town that make phenomenal sandwiches, Geno's, and it's all super good. I'm not going to pick one that I like the most, but I eat the most of Jimmy John's in part because they deliver. And I would say that I get Jimmy John's at least once a week. I love it. Let's see. Whew, boy, there's another skip. Opinion on the use of GMO thiolized yeast. I don't think it has the impact a lot of people think it does, but I love GMO. I'm a scientist at heart. GMO is safe. It's good. It's awesome. And to me, it's progression in the world of food. So I think it's rad. But the thiolized the one thiolized yeast fermented beer that I've had that blew my mind was at Crow and Wolf. Brad made I think it was like a New Zealand Pilsner or something along those lines, where he added thiolized yeast, and I think he might have used a Haas hop product as well. But this beer was wildly hoppy, like almost too hoppy. That was his comment, was we might have to blend this back down or something. I don't think they ended up doing that, but it was very, very strong in terms of the hop character. And so maybe it has an impact, but when we've done our experiments on it, people don't tend to be able to tell those beers apart very well. So I know that there's a lot of stuff that and I love, all of the labs out there who are trying to make products that more people want, and that do more of what brewers are looking for. And I would not hope that they would ever stop that. And I think it's rad. I'm just not sure that, in terms of thiolized yeast, that it's having as big of an impact as the pre thought or the hypotheses would have us believe, at least in real life, in vivo experiences. So, but I love GMO. I'm all about it. What's your favorite go-to bourbon? So Aaron, I like most brown liquors. My favorite is Scotch, and my favorite go-to is Macallan 12 in terms of Scotch. I drink bourbon, but that's not my go-to. I love it, but I love Scotch. That's my number one. And so in terms of bourbon, Fry Ranch lately, I don't know if you guys have heard of Fry Ranch. They're out of Fallon, Nevada. They make a really affordable, local, again, I guess you can't call it bourbon if it's not from Kentucky, but it is a bourbon that they make with all farm-grown grains, barley, and they do it all themselves, all in-house, and they're blowing up right now. And so I was walking through the liquor store probably 2 years ago with my brother around my birthday, and this guy, I was looking at bourbons. I was probably going to grab some EJ or something like that, and or EC Elijah Craig, and this guy's like, hey, just buy this. Trust me, you're going to love it. And so I did it, and it's one of my favorites now. So if you have the opportunity to try some Fry Ranch, that's Frey, Fry Ranch. Give it a go. They've got a all rye as well, and I've tried that. It's phenomenal, but it's just really smooth, really clean, a nice, easy sipper. I do not do bourbon cocktails or brown liquor cocktails. I think they taste so awful, but I think that's because I love drinking brown liquor neat so much that I'm looking for that, and I don't like the way it melds with, other stuff. And so my wife likes bourbon cocktails. She doesn't like bourbon straight though. So there you go. Adam Flynn says, what length and size, where are we going with this? Liquid line are you running in your Keyser? I do the 4 millimeter, what's it called? Evo barrier or something like that. Eva barrier. And I've got 16 feet of it. And so I like to serve slightly higher pressure so that it maintains that carbonation. and it works great for me. And they're fairly slow pours. They're not, super slow, but it'll take a good, 6-7 seconds to fill up a pint glass. And that's what I do there. What PSI do you set your main and secondary regulators at? I keep my main regulator at 50 PSI because I do have secondaries, and those secondaries are all different depending on what's on. I'll bump them up to 50 PSI if I'm carbonating something for a couple of days, and then I'll pop them down to usually about between 14 and 20 PSI depending on the style. If I have a cider on or a saison, it's usually going to be served at about 20 PSI, which is why I do the long lines so that you're not just pouring glasses of foam. And it works great for me. I've recommended other people do that when they ask, and I get complaints that they're pouring foam or that the no beer's coming out, it's just dripping out. You gotta balance your own system. What works for me may not work for you. It could be a function of, if you live in Denver, maybe the air pressure is different or something. I don't know. But do what works for you. That's what I like. And the EVA barrier lines are phenomenal. Barely any more expensive than your standard, beer line. And they don't hold on to any flavors in my experience. They don't get that crud that stays in beer lines after a few, even when I would clean my old beer lines, there'd be like a film on the inside that grossed me out. So I'll be sticking with those forever. I also use the Duo-Tight all quick disconnects, which is rad. All right. I've just let you guys know, I do have to bounce right at 10 o'clock today. We've got a whole bunch of other stuff going on, one of which is reviewing beers. So let's see. Aaron Kopp says, my wife is a board certified behavior analyst. Oh, that's awesome. I showed her the experiments and she approves. That's awesome. The comments, especially the comments on bias. She said her job is to manipulate p-values. It's really interesting. I think a lot of people view, and I get it, lay people who kind of, their conception of what a psychologist is something. I may have to run somewhere here real quick. I just got a little text, but I'll be back, I promise. But their conception of what a therapist is based off of watching Frasier or some other TV show, something like that. And that's not at all what it is. I feel like our profession, there are therapists out there who would have you believe that they have the answers to all of your problems. There's nobody out there who actually does. I hate to break it to you. The therapist role is not to give you advice. It's not to tell you how to live. It's not to do anything like that. What I recommend to family when they ask me or they propose, hey, I want to go see a therapist. Can you give me some tips? Is if they start telling you how to live your life, turn around, hightail it out of there, go find someone else. That's not their job. Our job is to listen and to hopefully provide you with a sense that somebody else out there understands what you're going through. So let's see here. Dun, 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 dun. David asks or says, I love brewing light lagers. Probably the only one in Franconia. That's awesome. Dave, do you remember when they somebody released I think it was the Yeast Bay, released like a Franconian lager yeast. It was probably 10 years ago or so now, but man, was it awesome. I loved it so much. I used it mostly for Schwarzbier. But great yeast, and I love light lagers as well. And by light, that's without the G and the H and with an E at the end. I love that as well. So Will Lovell, Brewlosophy's Will Lovell asks, top 3 fave hop varieties and what mythical creature would you associate with them? I don't do good with fantasy stuff. So mythical creatures, I mean, what would that be like? Okay, I'll do, I'm not going to be good at this. One of my top favorite hop varieties of all time is Tettning, and that's a German noble hop. So I would say what is it, Sinterklaas or something like that, like the German version of Santa Claus. That's a mythical creature. David, correct me on that one. What's the scary looking, is it Krampus, I think is the name. So anyways, and let's see, next one. Let's trying to spread the love. I don't like faves. I've said this a million times already, but if I had to pick, I would probably go with something like Simcoe or Amarillo. Those are kind of tied for me as far as kind of modern classics in terms of American hop varieties. And I would associate those with, I don't know. I can't do this. I can't do this for you, Will. I suck at myth. I suck at fantasy. I tried watching Game of Thrones and I thought it was awful. That's who you're talking to here. I watch documentaries. And so let's see. Third favorite hop variety would probably be something like, I'm trying to think of a hop variety that I feel doesn't get much attention, but I use often. And I use it because, I know what it is, because it accentuates so much and adds a layer to the beers. And that would be English Fuggle. I think it's a phenomenal hop. I know people hate it. I love it. And if you use it, my little trick, which it's not my trick, I heard that that Matt from Firestone Walker does this for Union Jack, or used to do it, is if you're making this hoppy American IPA, but you throw some Fuggle in at the 30-minute mark or so, and it's awesome. So that's what I'm going with. Tettnang, Amarillo / Citra, and Fuggles. All right. David says, agreed to Chris Stapleton and Tyler Childers. I love both of them. You should check out Coulter Wall. Coulter Wall. Yeah, he's awesome too, man. I love his voice. We've got where I live, it's a little bit more about me. I moved from this city that I live in now up to Seattle, the Seattle area. I lived in Bothell, Washington. Went to Inglemoor High School, if anybody out there is listening and knows what Inglemoor High School is. But I moved up there in 92, just before, Kurt Cobain died. And so I was in junior high when that happened, and they actually came and canceled classes when the news hit that he had killed himself. And there was this mentality up in that area. God, I just realized this is way off. Ooh, there we go. There was this mentality up there during that time, or at least it felt like it to me, that there were, if you liked certain styles of music, then, you were this, fill in the blank, and you got judged for it. And it was weird because I moved up there and I was listening to Boys to Men and Jodeci and all of that. And I loved it. Still do. But then I really got into the more, not underground, but like local, punk hard rock scene, and listened to a lot of that music. And, in doing that, the style of music that everyone loved to hate the most was country music. Pretty much any style of country music. Well, I was raised by, I lived with my grandfather for a couple of years. I lived with, he was always around, and all he listened to was Randy Travis and Clint Black and all those old school, 90s country musicians. He used to tell me, if it ain't country, it ain't music, boy. So I was like, man, I got to pretend like I don't like this stuff. So as I was growing up, and my wife really loves country music, among other things that I'm not really into either, I've just really had to work on myself to not be so judgmental about different styles of music. And I think it's, and I don't mean to judge anybody who does judge music either, but it does, for me, it felt very petty and childish to constantly be, evaluating somebody's musical prowess by what they enjoy listening to. It's like the people who hate on me for liking Miller Lite. There's no difference there, in my opinion. So I'm not afraid to admit that I do like some of these. Sturgill Simpson's another one. If you haven't listened to Sturgill, oh my God, he's phenomenal. I do appreciate that more than I do some of the more poppy, country music that's out there, but I'm not going to hate on that either. I actually just went to, Kane Brown came to town, and my youngest daughter is his biggest fan. And so we took her to see Kane Brown, and it was a fantastic show. He did some really cool stuff. Tried to FaceTime his wife live from stage, which I thought was kind of cute. So I'm done judging music. That's the story that I'm sticking to. So Kyle Smith says, any chance of Brulosophy attending GABF or /HomebrewCon? I wonder if that slash was intentional because they've combined going. It sounds like at least for 2024, they're doing them together now. I can tell you that I will not be there, in part because I've already got a vacation planned when it's happening. We travel a lot as a family. My wife is really into this travel hacking stuff. And so that's when you see that, if you follow me on Facebook or anything like that, and you see that we're in Europe or we're in, a different state or on another vacation, it's usually not paid for out of our pocket. It's this like travel point stuff, which is badass. Next year, we're actually doing Costa Rica and Jamaica, all on this whole travel points thing. So it's pretty rad. But I will not, just because I won't be there doesn't necessarily mean that somebody from Brulosophy won't be representing us at those events. At this point, there's not been much talk about it amongst the crew. I think because it's just so far out, and our focus is really on just content production. But it may very well be that somebody does attend. And if that's the case, we'll be sure to announce it on, on the podcast, on the show, stuff like that. Eric thought of another question. He says, video games, what do you play nowadays? Oh my God, you tapped into my second passion third after music and brewing. Check this out first off. So I use an Xbox, which I know a lot of people are mouse and key, but here's my story. About, 6 or 7 years ago, that's a total guess. My brother, I have a twin brother who lives out in Buffalo, New York. I'm talking to him on the phone or something, and he tells me, hey, dude, I know you have an Xbox. It was very rarely used. My son at the time was obviously about 7 years younger than he is now, and he's 13. But I have a nephew who's right around the same age as my son. And so my brother tells me, hey, there's this game called Fortnite. It's free. You just download it on your Xbox and you play it and they can talk. So we set up my nephew and my son, and they're playing, and I'm sitting there watching my son play this, and I'm like, dude, this looks fun, right? I was never into games. I think I did have the Nintendo Cube when I was in college, and I played I forget what game it was, I don't know what it was called, but it was just basically a campaign. And so anyways, my son's playing that, and he hands me the controller, and I start playing it. I'm like, dude, this is super fun. So I went out and bought myself an Xbox, set it up in my room, and I thought this is a perfect opportunity to, one, keep in touch with my brother and my nephew, but also for my son and I to have something to do that's much more him and not me pushing something that I like on him, right? Because I could easily have forced him into guitar lessons or something like that. So anyways, I played Fortnite for a good 3 years before some friends at where I work, big time, gamers, excuse me, inhaled a little saliva there. Before they told me about Black Ops 4, which was I'm not even sure how the whole Call of Duty Modern Warfare stuff gets organized or separated, but they got me into that, and it's just been full on Call of Duty since then for me. I play it all the time. It's really the only game I play nowadays. But I'll admit, as fun as it is, and I will play like multiplayer if nobody else is online. My favorite aspect of it is hopping on with the homies and just jamming out a couple wins in Resurgence or something like that, in Warzone, and being done with it. I might play an hour and a half, couple hours. If my wife's out of town, I might play 3 or 4 hours in one day. I love it, and it just depends on where I'm at and who's online, because that's how I kind of keep in contact with family and friends who are all over the place. So I play with my cousin who's up in Seattle, my brother in Buffalo, and my other cousin who's like my sister, her boyfriend is on as well. So we'll play with this crew. I've got some friends locally that we play with as well. So that's my answer. Call of Duty, I love it so much, and I know a lot of people love to pretend like they hate it, but they keep playing anyways, which cracks me up. It's kind of like, again, a lot of analogs to the beer world. Okay, David says, I just saw the small, probably 6-ounce beer can glass with the Brulosophy logo, and man, they look so neat. I know that you're not selling those, but could you tell where you got those glasses from? And we get the logo printed on it for ourselves. That'd be awesome. I am not going to allow people to take our logo and do that. There's a bazillion reasons why. Our logo is copyrighted. And so the places where you would get them printed, if they are, that we use grandstand.com or eGrandstand, whatever it's called, for all of our stuff. A lot of breweries use those. We have a vendor account, all that stuff. But they're usually, they will ask if you're using a copyrighted photo, and if they're legit, and they should be asking that. So yeah, I don't want to get caught up in all of that stuff. I'm currently working with somebody, a fan of Brulosophy, who sounds like has the ability to do a lot of the merch stuff that our fans are interested in. So again, don't hold your breath. We've been ever since COVID, it's been a goal of ours to have more merch, to offer more merch, and more than just what you can find on Amazon right now. Speaking of Amazon, I got to get this out there. There are people out there for whatever reason who copy Brulosophy stuff and slap it up on a t-shirt, or they're just awful replications of what we do. If you go to Amazon and find anything Brulosophy and it's not sold by Brulosophy, that's not us. You are giving somebody else your money for a piece of crap that they stole from us. I incessantly go and report these guys. Amazon takes them down, and 2 days later, there's something else up under a new account. So, mind who you're buying stuff from on Amazon. Will Level says, sending you a mythological creature documentary now. A documentary on mythological creatures. I might actually get into that. Would it be like the the Loch Ness Monster and stuff like that, or the Bigfoot? I don't believe in any of that. My son, for a while there, was a Bigfoot believer. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions coming in. We are bumping right up against 10 o'clock when I promised my family I'd be done and go further help them with their pumpkin carving. Thank you guys so incredibly much for all of the support. I have to imagine it gets old hearing us talk about Patreon, but you are the reason that we're able to keep doing this. If Patreon today were just to stop and be done with it, so would we. There's no way we would be able to continue doing what we're doing without this venue. It's why we talk about it as much as we do. And we have got some ideas for changing the reward tiers. What we would love, and I know this sounds maybe a little bit weird, but what we would love is to convert some of those $1 a month patrons into $3 or $5 a month patrons. And so what we're doing is trying to offer more for those higher tiers. Another thing is just to keep in mind, we are running out of unpublished contributor recipes. And so we may be using the $1 level in the future as just a way to access all of the other, what is there, like 50 or so recipes online now that are just for patrons only, as a way just to have access to those recipes now, as opposed to us constantly trying to find old ones. And thankfully, we've still got a few left to get us through the year, but that may be something of the past. But we have some new stuff coming up that's going to be really rad. One of the exciting new rewards that Martin has agreed to give is access to like the B-roll of the Brulosophy Show episodes. And we released the first one. It was open to all patrons. We will be limiting that to people at a specific tier and higher in the future. But for now, we just want to offer it to everybody as a show of our thanks for your support. So, all right, everybody, it is Saturday. I'm drinking water now in prep for drinking some alt beer later. So thank you again. You're all awesome. And cheers. Have a great weekend. I cannot say it enough. Thank you to all of the amazing people who allow us to keep doing this thing that we love so much by supporting us over on Patreon. These sessions are always a lot of fun, and we'd love to have even more people involved. If you are interested, head over to patreon.com/Brulosophy to view all of the rewards you can get for helping us out. And don't forget to subscribe to the Brew Lab podcast, where host Cade Job takes you into the lab with brewing professionals to discuss the fascinating work they're doing on our favorite beverage. And remember to head over to Brulosophy.com to stay current on everything we're up to. The Brulosophy podcast is made possible by the generous support of our sponsors, as well as all of our rad listeners. We seriously could not do this without you. Cheers to everyone who has subscribed and left a review of our show. It makes a huge difference. If you haven't yet, please consider doing so. Head over to Brulosophy.com/support to view a list of ways you can easily help us to continue producing this podcast. If you want a reward for your support, visit Patreon.com/Brulosophy. Thanks again for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Brulosophy podcast. Until then, think beer.
Start off the morning with some hot tea, lemon and honey, cause it suits my bro. Put some herb in the bowl, yeah, it's homegrown. Ain't gotta go through the middleman no more. Life is good, the likelihood of me.
Fargo, the new virtual assistant from Wells Fargo, makes banking faster and easier. Like this.
Fargo, what's my checking account routing number?
And this.
Fargo, turn off my debit card.
And this.
Fargo, what did I spend on groceries last month?
And that's just the beginning. Do you, Fargo? You can in the Wells Fargo mobile app. Learn more at wellsfargo.com/getfargo.
Terms and conditions apply. Your mobile carrier's availability and message and data rates may apply. Wells Fargo Bank, N.A., member FDIC.